Hashtag the hook, what happens when love meets money and secrets collide with assumptions? Sometimes the person you think has nothing turns out to have everything. Sometimes the family trying to protect their wealth discovers they're dealing with someone who could buy them 10 times over. This is the story of Emma Chun, a young woman who chose love over revealing her true identity, only to find herself caught in a web of prenuptials, prejudice, and shocking revelations that would change two families forever. When Michael Harrison brought home the girl he wanted to marry, his mother Margaret saw only what she expected to see: a simple shop assistant with no background, no money, and definitely no place in their upper-class world. But appearances can be deceiving, and some secrets are worth billions. Emma Chun adjusted the price tag on a silk scarf for the third time that morning, her delicate fingers working with practiced efficiency despite the nervous energy that had been building inside her for weeks. The boutique where she worked was nothing special, just another high-end store in the fashionable district of the city, but it had become her sanctuary, a place where she could be just Emma, not Emma Chun, daughter of tech billionaire David Chun, founder of Chun Industries. She had been living this double life for almost 2 years now, ever since she decided to leave her father's empire and discover who she really was without the weight of billions behind her name. The small apartment she rented above a bakery, the job that paid just enough to cover her modest expenses, the simple clothes she wore, all of it was a carefully constructed reality that allowed her to experience something she had never known growing up: normalcy. The bell above the door chimed, and Emma looked up to see him again. Michael Harrison had been coming to the boutique for 3 weeks now, always with some excuse about needing a gift for his sister or looking for something for his mother. He was tall, with kind eyes, and a smile that seemed genuine in a way that was rare among the wealthy clients who usually frequented the store. What Emma found most attractive about him was that he treated her like a person, not like the help. "Good morning, Emma," he said, and she loved the way he said her name, like it mattered. "Good morning, Michael. Let me guess, another gift for your sister?" He laughed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Actually, I was wondering if you might want to grab coffee sometime. I mean, when you're not working." Emma felt her heart skip, but also felt the familiar pang of guilt that came with these moments. Should she tell him who she really was? Should she mention that her father's net worth was larger than the GDP of some small countries? Should she explain that she was currently hiding from a life of private jets and board meetings? "I'd like that," she said simply, pushing the complicated thoughts aside. "I get off at 6. "Perfect. There's a little cafe around the corner." Very low-key. As he left, Emma's coworker Sarah appeared beside her, grinning widely. "Girl, that man is interested. And he's gorgeous. Do you know what he does?" Emma shrugged, though she suspected from his clothes and the way he carried himself that Michael came from money. "I think he works in business. Something corporate." What she didn't know was that Michael Harrison was the heir to Harrison Holdings, a real estate empire that had been in his family for 3 generations. His mother, Margaret Harrison, was one of the most formidable socialites in the city, and she had very specific ideas about who was suitable for her son. That evening, as Emma and Michael sat in the small cafe sharing stories over coffee that grew cold while they talked, neither of them mentioned their real backgrounds. Emma told him about growing up in California, which was true, though she left out the part about the 50-room mansion and the staff of 30. Michael told her about his work, though he described it as helping manage family properties rather than being groomed to take over a billion-dollar real estate empire. "What made you move here?" Michael asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. Emma considered her answer carefully. "I wanted to see if I could make it on my own. You know, without any help from family. I wanted to know who I really was when all the external stuff was stripped away." It was perhaps the most honest thing she had said in months, and Michael seemed to understand something deeper in her words. "I think about that sometimes too," he said. "About whether the life you're born into is really your life, or just something you're wearing." From that first date, they were inseparable. Michael would pick Emma up after work in his modest sedan, not the Ferrari that sat in his garage, but a car that wouldn't draw attention or make her uncomfortable. They would go to small restaurants, take walks in the park, or spend evenings in Emma's tiny apartment watching movies on her old television. For Emma, it was magical. For the first time in her life, someone was falling in love with who she really was, not what she represented. Michael didn't know about her trust funds or her father's empire. He loved the way she laughed at his jokes, how she listened intently when he talked about his dreams, how she made even the smallest moments feel special. Michael, meanwhile, was falling harder than he ever had before. Emma was unlike any woman he had ever dated. She wasn't interested in expensive restaurants or designer clothes. She seemed to find joy in simple things, a good book, a sunset, a conversation that lasted until dawn. She was intelligent and funny, but there was also something mysterious about her, as if she was holding back parts of herself. 6 months into their relationship, Michael knew he wanted to marry Emma. He had never been more certain of anything in his life. But he also knew that introducing her to his family, particularly his mother, would be complicated. Margaret Harrison had spent years orchestrating suitable matches for her son. She had introduced him to daughters of senators, heirs to fortune, women who moved in the same circles, and understood the responsibilities that came with the Harrison name. The idea that her son might be serious about a shop girl was something she had never considered and would never accept. Michael decided to tell his mother about Emma gradually. He started mentioning her casually in conversations, describing her as someone special he was seeing. Margaret listened with the polite interest she showed toward all of Michael's temporary distractions, assuming this too would pass. But as weeks turned to months and Michael's mentions of Emma became more frequent and more serious in tone, Margaret began to pay attention. She hired a private investigator to look into Emma Chun, and what she found seemed to confirm her worst fears. According to the report, Emma Chun was 26 years old, worked as a sales assistant at Boutique Elegance, lived in a small apartment above a bakery, and had no significant assets or family connections. Her background was remarkably ordinary, which to Margaret was the same as saying it was entirely unsuitable. When Michael finally worked up the courage to bring Emma home for dinner, Margaret was prepared. She had spent days planning how to handle the situation, how to make it clear to this young woman that she was out of her league without being overtly rude. Emma spent hours getting ready for that dinner, changing clothes 3 times before settling on a simple black dress that she hoped would be appropriate. She was nervous in a way she hadn't been since she was a child, before she learned to navigate the complex social requirements of her father's world. The Harrison mansion was impressive, but not ostentatious. Old money had a way of displaying wealth that was both understated and unmistakable. Emma recognized the quiet luxury immediately, though she gave no sign of it. Margaret Harrison was everything Emma had expected, polished, gracious, and watching Emma's every move with the intensity of a hawk studying potential prey. The dinner conversation was carefully orchestrated, with Margaret asking questions that seemed friendly but were clearly designed to establish Emma's background and, more importantly, her limitations. "And what do your parents do, dear?" Margaret asked over the soup course. "My father is in technology," Emma replied, which was true if incomplete. "How nice. A computer programmer?" "Something like that." Michael's father, Robert Harrison, was more welcoming but clearly took his cues from his wife. Michael himself seemed tense, clearly worried about how the evening would go. As the evening progressed, Emma could feel Margaret's disapproval crystallizing into something harder and more determined. She recognized the look because she had seen it before, in the faces of people who had underestimated her father before they knew who he was. After dinner, as Michael walked Emma to his car, she could see the stress in his shoulders. "That went well, I think," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Emma squeezed his hand. "Your mother is protective of you. That's not necessarily a bad thing." But, even as she said it, Emma knew that Margaret Harrison had already decided Emma was a threat to be eliminated. What she didn't know was how far Margaret would be willing to go to protect what she saw as her family's interests. The next morning, Margaret called her lawyer. It was time, she decided, to take decisive action. If her son was determined to marry this unsuitable girl, then she would make sure the family's assets were protected. She would insist on a prenuptial agreement so ironclad that even if the marriage lasted, Emma would walk away with nothing significant. More than that, Margaret would make the process of signing the prenup so humiliating and degrading that Emma would finally understand she didn't belong in their world. She would make it clear that the Harrison family saw her as nothing more than a gold digger, and hopefully, Emma would have enough pride to walk away on her own. 3 months after the tense dinner at the Harrison mansion, Michael knew he couldn't wait any longer. Every day he spent with Emma only confirmed what his heart already knew. She was the woman he wanted to spend his life with. Her laugh had become his favorite sound, her presence the thing that made everything else make sense. He planned the proposal carefully, not in some expensive restaurant or exotic location, but in the small park where they had taken their first walk together. It was a Thursday evening in October, and the leaves were changing colors, creating a canopy of gold and red above the bench where they sat feeding ducks. Emma was telling him about a difficult customer she had dealt with that day, animating her story with gestures, when Michael suddenly dropped to one knee. The ring he pulled from his pocket wasn't the largest diamond in the world, but it was beautiful and chosen with love. "Emma Chun," he said, his voice shaking slightly with emotion. "You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. You've shown me what it means to love someone for exactly who they are. Will you marry me?" Emma's hand flew to her mouth, tears immediately springing to her eyes. In that moment, she forgot about her complicated family situation, forgot about the billions in her trust fund, forgot about everything except the man she loved asking her to be his wife. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course, yes." As Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, Emma felt a mixture of pure joy and deep anxiety. She knew that accepting his proposal meant she would have to make some difficult decisions about her secret life. She couldn't marry Michael without him knowing the truth about who she was, could she? But, for now, in this perfect moment, she let herself simply be happy. They went back to Emma's small apartment and called their respective families to share the news. Michael called his parents first, and Emma could hear the strained congratulations from Margaret through the phone. When it was Emma's turn to call her family, she stepped into the bedroom for privacy. Her father, David Chun, answered on the second ring. Despite their complicated relationship and her decision to live independently, they had maintained contact, though she hadn't told him about Michael. "Emma, sweetheart, how are you?" "Dad, I'm engaged." There was a long pause. David Chun was not a man easily surprised, but this caught him off guard. "Engaged? To whom?" "His name is Michael Harrison. He's wonderful, Dad. I love him." "Harrison, as in Harrison Holdings?" Emma was surprised her father knew the name. "You know his family?" "I know of them. They're well regarded in real estate." "This is serious then?" "Very serious. We haven't set a date yet, but—" "Emma, does he know about your background? About the family business?" This was the question Emma had been dreading. "Not yet. I've been living as just Emma Chun, remember? That was the whole point of this experiment." Her father was quiet for a long moment. David Chun had built his empire from nothing, and he understood better than most that people's motivations changed dramatically when money entered the picture. "Sweetheart, you're going to have to tell him eventually, and probably sooner rather than later. Marriage changes things. Legal things, financial things. You can't keep this secret much longer." Emma knew he was right, but the thought of potentially losing Michael filled her with dread. What if he felt betrayed by her deception? What if he thought she had been testing him? What if he only wanted her because of the money? Meanwhile, across town, Margaret Harrison was having a very different conversation with her son. "A prenuptial agreement is not negotiable, Michael," she said firmly, sitting across from him in his father's study. "If you insist on going through with this marriage, the family assets must be protected." Michael had expected this, but it still stung. "Mom, Emma isn't marrying me for money. She doesn't care about any of that. Every woman cares about money, darling. Some are just better at hiding it than others." Margaret's voice was cold and calculating. "This girl works in a shop, Michael. She lives in a tiny apartment. Do you really think she's going to say no to access to the Harrison fortune? She's not like that. Then, she won't mind signing the agreement, will she?" Robert Harrison, who had been quietly listening from behind his newspaper, finally spoke up. "Son, your mother isn't wrong about protecting the family assets. It's not about Emma personally, it's about being smart." But Margaret had plans that went far beyond simply protecting assets. She had spent weeks working with her lawyer to create a prenuptial agreement so one-sided and insulting that no self-respecting woman would sign it. The document not only protected the Harrison fortune but included clauses that would humiliate Emma, restrictions on her social activities, requirements for her to maintain certain standards of appearance, and a clause that would leave her with almost nothing if the marriage ended for any reason. I want her to understand exactly what kind of family she's marrying into, Margaret explained to her lawyer, Charles Whitmore. I want her to see how seriously we take the protection of our legacy. Charles, who had known Margaret for 20 years, understood that this was about more than legal protection. This was about making Emma Chun feel small and unwelcome. Mrs. Harrison, some of these clauses are quite harsh. They might even be unenforceable. I don't care about enforceability, Charles. I care about making a point. The next week, Margaret arranged a meeting with Emma. She called Michael and suggested that it would be appropriate for the women to discuss wedding plans together. But her real intention was to present the prenuptial agreement without Michael present. Emma agreed to meet at an upscale restaurant downtown, thinking this might be an opportunity to build a better relationship with her future mother-in-law. She wore her best dress and arrived 10 minutes early, nervous but hopeful. Margaret arrived precisely on time, accompanied by Charles Whitmore, which immediately set Emma on edge. This didn't feel like a casual lunch about wedding planning. Emma, dear, Margaret said as they sat down, I thought we should discuss some practical matters regarding your engagement to my son. Emma nodded, though she was beginning to sense that this conversation was not going to go well. Margaret wasted no time. The Harrison family has certain traditions when it comes to marriage. One of those traditions is ensuring that our family assets are properly protected through a prenuptial agreement. Emma felt her stomach tighten. She had expected this possibility, but the formal way Margaret was presenting it, with a lawyer present, felt more like a business negotiation than a family discussion. Charles Whitmore slid a thick document across the table. Ms. Chun, this is a standard prenuptial agreement that we use for all marriages into the Harrison family. Emma picked up the document and began to read. With each page, her shock and anger grew. This wasn't just a prenuptial agreement. It was an insult. The financial terms were so one-sided that they essentially treated her like hired help rather than a wife. But worse than the money clauses were the personal restrictions. According to the agreement, Emma would need Margaret's approval for any significant purchases, any charitable donations, any career decisions. She would be required to maintain certain social standards and could not embarrass the family through inappropriate behavior or associations. If the marriage ended for any reason, including Michael's infidelity, she would receive a small settlement that would barely cover living expenses for a few years. Emma started to speak, then stopped, trying to process what she was reading. Comprehensive, Margaret finished. Yes, we believe in being thorough. Emma looked up at Margaret, seeing the cold satisfaction in her eyes, and, suddenly, understood that this wasn't really about protecting family assets. This was about making her feel like she wasn't good enough, about establishing from the very beginning that she would always be an outsider in the Harrison family. You want me to essentially sign away my dignity along with any claim to marital assets, Emma said quietly. I want you to understand what you're getting into, Margaret replied smoothly. Marriage into a prominent family comes with certain responsibilities and limitations. If you're not prepared for that reality, it's better to know now. Emma felt anger rising in her chest, but also something else, a kind of clarity she hadn't experienced in months. This woman was trying to humiliate her, trying to make her feel small and powerless. Margaret Harrison had no idea who she was dealing with. For a moment, Emma considered revealing her true identity right there at the table. She could imagine the look on Margaret's face when she learned that Emma's trust fund alone was worth more than the entire Harrison Holdings portfolio. She could picture Margaret's shock when she realized that Emma Chun wasn't some shop girl trying to marry up, but rather a billionaire's daughter who had been slumming it to experience normal life. But something held her back. Maybe it was the desire to see how far Margaret would go, or maybe it was the realization that this situation was revealing important truths about both families and their values. I'll need to review this with my own lawyer, Emma said calmly, setting the document back on the table. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly. She clearly hadn't expected Emma to have a lawyer, much less the composure to suggest an independent review. Of course, Margaret said smoothly, though Emma could see her recalculating. Though I should mention that we'd like to have this finalized quickly. We prefer not to let these legal matters drag on. Emma stood up, her decision made. I understand the urgency, Mrs. Harrison. I'll be in touch soon with my response. As she walked away from the restaurant, Emma felt a mixture of anger and liberation. Margaret Harrison had just shown her true colors, and Emma now knew exactly what kind of family she would be marrying into if she signed that agreement. But more than that, Emma realized that her experiment in living as a normal person had reached a natural conclusion. She could no longer keep her real identity secret, not if she was going to marry Michael. And she definitely couldn't sign an agreement that treated her like a gold digger when the reality was so different from Margaret's assumptions. That evening, she called her father's lawyer, James Morrison, who had been handling her legal affairs since she decided to live independently. Emma, it's good to hear from you. How's this simple life treating you? It's about to get complicated, James. I need your help with something, and I think you're going to find it very interesting. As she described the situation and read him portions of Titch, Emma spent 3 sleepless nights after her lunch with Margaret, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment and wrestling with decisions that would change everything. The prenuptial agreement sat on her kitchen table like a ticking bomb, each clause more insulting than the last. But what bothered her most wasn't the legal document itself. It was what it revealed about the family she was about to marry into. On Friday morning, she made her decision. She called in sick to work, something she had never done in the 2 years she had been living this simple life, and instead took a taxi across town to the gleaming glass towers of the financial district. The Chun Industries building rose 45 stories into the sky, its sleek design a testament to the technological empire her father had built from nothing. As Emma walked through the marble lobby, wearing her simple work clothes among the sea of expensive suits, she felt like she was crossing back into a world she had almost forgotten. Ms. Chun, the receptionist said with surprise and obvious relief. We weren't expecting you. Should I notify your father? Not yet, Maria. Is James Morrison available? James Morrison had been the family lawyer for 15 years, watching Emma grow up from a precocious child into the brilliant young woman who had shocked everyone by walking away from billions to work in a boutique. When Emma entered his office, he stood immediately, his weathered face creasing into a genuine smile. Emma, you look like you've been living in the real world, he said with affection. It suits you. James, I need your help with something that's going to sound crazy. She told him everything. About Michael, about their relationship, about Margaret's assumptions, and the insulting prenuptial agreement. As she spoke, James's expression shifted from amusement to something approaching glee. So let me understand this correctly, he said when she finished. Margaret Harrison thinks you're a gold digger trying to marry into their family for money, when in reality, your trust fund alone is worth more than their entire company. That's about right. James leaned back in his leather chair, a calculating look in his eyes. Emma, your father didn't build this empire by being nice to people who underestimated him. Sometimes the best business lesson is also the best life lesson. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that we give Mrs. Harrison exactly what she's asking for, a response to her prenuptial agreement. But perhaps not the response she's expecting. Over the next 2 hours, James and Emma crafted a response that was both legally sound and deliciously ironic. They prepared a counterproposal to the Harrison prenuptial agreement, one that would protect Emma's assets while offering Michael far more generous terms than his mother had offered her. But more than that, they prepared a comprehensive financial disclosure that would reveal exactly who Emma Chun really was. The document included her trust fund balances, her inheritance projections, her stock holdings, and a detailed breakdown of Chun Industries' global operations and her position as heir to the empire. Are you sure you want to do this? James asked as they finalized the documents. Once this information is out, your experiment in normal living is over. Emma thought about Michael, about the man who had fallen in love with a shop assistant and proposed to her in a park. She thought about whether their love was strong enough to survive the truth about who she really was. It's time, James. I can't marry him with lies between us, and I certainly can't let his mother treat me like I'm some kind of fortune hunter. What about your father? Shouldn't you tell him what's happening? Emma hesitated. David Chun had built his fortune by being ruthless when necessary, and she knew he wouldn't approve of her gentle approach to this situation. He would want to destroy the Harrisons publicly, to make an example of them. Let's keep this between us for now. I want to handle this my way. That evening, Emma called Michael and asked him to come to her apartment. She needed to tell him the truth before his mother received the legal documents that would turn their world upside down. Michael arrived with flowers and wine, clearly expecting a romantic evening. Emma's serious expression immediately told him that something was wrong. "We need to talk," she said, gesturing for him to sit down on her small couch. "Is this about the prenup?" "Emma, I'm so sorry about my mother. I had no idea she was going to ambush you like that. We can negotiate the terms, make it more reasonable." Emma shook her head. "Michael, there's something I need to tell you about me, about my background. Something I should have told you a long time ago." She saw fear flash across his face, probably wondering if she was about to reveal some terrible secret or tell him she was already married or had a criminal past. "I haven't been completely honest with you about my family," she began carefully. "When I told you my father was in technology, that was true, but it was also incomplete." Michael waited, clearly trying to prepare himself for whatever revelation was coming. "My father is David Chun. He founded Chin Industries." Michael's expression didn't change immediately, and Emma realized he might not recognize the name. "Michael, Chin Industries is one of the largest technology conglomerates in the world. My father's net worth is approximately $12 billion. Now Michael's expression changed. His face went completely white, and he stared at her as if she had just spoken in a foreign language. "12 billion, he whispered. "I know this is a shock. I've been living this way, working at the boutique, living in this apartment, because I wanted to know who I was without all of that. I wanted to experience normal life. I wanted to fall in love with someone who loved me for who I am, not what I represent." Michael stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. "Emma, I don't understand. You've been lying to me for 8 months. I haven't lied about anything that matters. Everything about my personality, my feelings, my love for you. That's all real. I just didn't mention the money." "Didn't mention the money?" Michael's voice rose. "Emma, you're talking about billions of dollars. You let me propose to you with a ring that probably costs less than your lunch budget." Emma could see the hurt and confusion in his eyes, and she felt her heart breaking. This was exactly what she had feared, that the money would change everything between them. "The ring is perfect because it came from your heart. The amount you spent doesn't matter to me. But it matters to me," Michael said, his voice full of anguish. "I've been trying to impress you, trying to provide for you, planning our future based on my income and my family's money. Do you have any idea how this makes me feel?" Emma stood up, reaching for his hands. "Michael, please. I know this is overwhelming, but nothing fundamental has changed. I'm still the same person you fell in love with." Michael pulled his hands away, not cruelly, but in a way that felt like a door closing between them. "Emma, everything has changed. My mother gave you that prenup because she thought you were after our family's money. But the truth is, I'm the one who's out of his league here. I'm the one who doesn't belong." "That's not true, isn't it? Your father could buy my family's company without thinking about it. You've been slumming it with me, pretending to be impressed by my family's little real estate empire." Emma felt tears starting in her eyes. "Michael, I love you. I chose you. Doesn't that mean anything?" Before Michael could answer, Emma's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and saw it was James Morrison. "I should take this," she said apologetically. "Emma, I'm sorry to call so late, but I thought you should know. I've just sent the legal response to the Harrison family lawyer. Margaret Harrison should receive it first thing Monday morning." Emma's stomach dropped. In all the emotional turmoil of confessing to Michael, she had temporarily forgotten about the legal bombshell that was about to explode in Margaret's lap. "What legal response?" Michael asked, having overheard enough of the conversation to be concerned. Emma hung up the phone and turned to face Michael, knowing that she was about to make an already difficult situation much worse. "Michael, your mother's prenuptial agreement was insulting. It wasn't just about protecting your family's assets. It was designed to humiliate me, to make me feel small and unwelcome. So you did what?" "I had my lawyer prepare a response. A counter-proposal." Michael's eyes narrowed. "What kind of counter-proposal?" Emma took a deep breath. "One that reveals my true financial situation and offers you far more generous terms than your mother offered me." "Oh God," Michael said, sinking back onto the couch. "Emma, my mother is going to lose her mind. Your mother made assumptions about me based on appearances. She treated me like a gold digger when the reality is that I'm worth more than your entire family combined. Maybe it's time she learned something about judging people. Michael looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. You're going to destroy my family. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I'm just defending myself against someone who tried to humiliate me. Emma, you don't understand my mother. This isn't going to teach her a lesson. This is going to start a war. As if summoned by Michael's words, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his mother's name. Don't answer it, Emma said quickly. But Michael was already swiping to accept the call. Margaret's voice was so loud that Emma could hear every word clearly. Michael Harrison, you get home this instant. We have a serious problem, and I need to speak with you immediately. Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong is that your little shop girl just declared war on this family, and we need to discuss our response. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Margaret had clearly received the legal documents already, despite James saying they wouldn't be delivered until Monday. I'll be right there, Michael said, ending the call. Margaret Harrison stood in her husband's study at 11:47 p.m., holding the legal documents that had just been hand-delivered by a courier service, her hands shaking not with fear but with pure rage. The papers contained information that made no sense, numbers that couldn't possibly be real, and implications that turned her entire understanding of the situation upside down. This has to be fake, she said for the fourth time, pacing back and forth across the Persian rug while Robert sat behind his desk, reading the documents with increasing amazement. Margaret, I've checked the letterhead, the legal formatting, the signatures. This is from Morrison, Clark & Associates. They're one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. They don't fake financial documents. Margaret snatched the papers back from him and stared at the financial disclosure section again. According to these documents, Emma Chen's personal trust fund was valued at $3.2 billion. Her projected inheritance from Chun Industries was estimated at an additional $8.9 billion. The counterproposal she had submitted for the prenuptial agreement would leave Michael financially secure for 10 lifetimes, even if their marriage failed on the wedding day. Chun Industries, Margaret muttered, and suddenly, her face went even paler. Robert, Chun Industries. Where have I heard that name? Robert was already at his computer, typing frantically. Margaret, sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want to understand how that little shop girl is claiming to be worth more than the GDP of Luxembourg. Because she is. Robert's voice was quiet and stunned. Margaret, David Chin founded Chun Industries 25 years ago. It started as a small software company and now owns subsidiaries in artificial intelligence, renewable energy, biotechnology, and aerospace. He's number 14 on the Forbes Billionaire list. Margaret felt the room spin slightly. That's impossible. I had her investigated. She works in a boutique. She lives above a bakery. According to this article, his daughter Emma Chun graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with degrees in business and computer science. She worked briefly at Chun Industries before taking a sabbatical to pursue personal interests 2 years ago. The pieces began falling into place in Margaret's mind, and, with each realization, her humiliation grew deeper. Emma hadn't been trying to marry up, she had been slumming. Margaret had offered her a prenuptial agreement designed to protect a fortune that was pocket change compared to Emma's real wealth. She played me, Margaret whispered, and then, louder, with growing fury, that manipulative little witch played me. Margaret, maybe we should think about this differently. If Michael marries her, he'll be set for life. Our family will be connected to one of the most powerful business empires in the world. But Margaret wasn't thinking about advantages. She was thinking about how Emma had sat in that restaurant and let Margaret treat her like a gold-digging nobody, never revealing that she could buy and sell the Harrison family without thinking about it. She made a fool of me, Robert. She sat there and let me lecture her about understanding her place, knowing the entire time that she was worth 50 times what we are. When Michael arrived at the house 20 minutes later, he found his parents in a state he had never seen before. His father looked shell-shocked, and his mother was pacing with the manic energy of someone whose world had just been turned completely upside down. Michael, Margaret said the moment he walked into the study, did you know? Did I know what? Did you know that your little girlfriend is one of the wealthiest women in America? Michael sank into one of the leather chairs facing his father's desk. I just found out tonight. She told you. She told me everything. About her father, about Chun Industries, about why she's been living like a normal person. Margaret's eyes narrowed. How long has she been lying to you? She wasn't lying, exactly. She just didn't mention the money. Didn't mention $12 billion? Margaret's voice rose to a near shriek. Michael, that's not omitting information. That's deception on a massive scale. Michael buried his face in his hands. His head was spinning from everything Emma had told him, and his mother's reaction wasn't helping him process any of it. What I don't understand, Robert said thoughtfully, is why she would choose to live that way. If you have that kind of money, why work in a store? Why live in a tiny apartment? She said she wanted to know who she was without all the money. She wanted to experience normal life. Margaret stopped pacing and stared at her son. She wanted to experience normal life, so she decided to use you as an experiment? It wasn't like that, wasn't it? Michael, think about this objectively. She's a billionaire's daughter who decided to play poor girl for a while, and you were her entertainment. Her way of seeing how the other half lives. Michael wanted to argue, but Margaret's words echoed his own fears. Had Emma been studying him like some kind of anthropological subject? Had their entire relationship been her way of experiencing what it was like to date someone from a lower social class? Look at this prenuptial counterproposal, Margaret continued, waving the documents in the air. Do you see what she's offering you? More money than our family has ever had, just for marrying her. Do you know how that makes you look? Michael looked at the document his mother thrust into his hands. Emma's counterproposal was generous to the point of being embarrassing. If they married, he would receive a guaranteed annual allowance that was more than his current yearly salary. If the marriage ended, he would receive a settlement that would make him independently wealthy. She's trying to buy you, Margaret said. She wants to own you the way she probably owns everything else in her life. That's not fair, Mom. You offered her a prenup that would have left her with almost nothing. She's just responding to what you started. What I started. Margaret's voice rose again. What I started was trying to protect our family from what I thought was a fortune hunter. I had no idea I was dealing with someone who could destroy us without thinking about it. Robert cleared his throat. Margaret, perhaps we should consider that we might have been wrong about Emma's motivations. Wrong? Robert, she let me humiliate myself. She sat in that restaurant and let me treat her like hired help, knowing the entire time that she was richer than God. That's not the behavior of someone with good intentions. Michael stood up abruptly. I need to go. Where are you going? I need to think. I need to process all of this without everyone telling me what to feel about it. Michael, Margaret said, her voice becoming calculating. You need to understand something. This isn't just about your relationship anymore. That girl just declared war on this family. Look at this legal response. It's not just a prenup counterproposal. It's a public humiliation. She's making it clear that she considers us insignificant. Maybe we are insignificant compared to her family. No son of mine is insignificant, Margaret said firmly. And no one, no matter how much money they have, gets to treat the Harrison family like we don't matter. As Michael left his parents' house, his phone buzzed with a text from Emma. I know this is overwhelming. I love you. And I'm sorry for keeping this secret. We need to talk. But Michael wasn't ready to talk. He drove aimlessly through the city, trying to reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the billionaire heiress who had just revealed herself. Every memory of their relationship was now colored by this new information. Had she been laughing at him internally when he took her to modest restaurants? Had she been amused by his concern about affording their future together? Meanwhile, across town, Emma was having her own crisis. She sat in her small apartment, staring at the engagement ring on her finger and wondering if she had just destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to her. She had thought that honesty would bring her and Michael closer together, but instead it seemed to have driven a wedge between them that might be impossible to remove. Her phone rang, and she saw her father's name on the caller ID. Apparently word had already reached him about the legal documents. Emma, James Morrison called me. He said you're engaged and that you've revealed your identity to the Harrison family. Hello, Dad. Yes, it's been an eventful evening. I've been doing some research on this Harrison family. Real estate empire, worth maybe $150 million. Old money, conservative values. Not exactly our usual social circle. Michael is a good man, Dad. I'm sure he is. But, Emma, you've just created a very delicate situation. These people are going to feel threatened and humiliated. People in that position don't always behave rationally. Emma felt a chill. Her father didn't make casual observations about business psychology. What are you saying? I'm saying that Margaret Harrison has probably spent the last 2 hours trying to figure out how to fight back against someone she sees as having made a fool of her. And people like that can be dangerous when they feel cornered. As if to prove David Chen's point, across town Margaret Harrison was making phone calls. She had contacts in the media, people who owed her favors, people who would be very interested in a story about a billionaire's daughter who had been deceiving everyone about her identity. This is about more than a prenuptial agreement now, she told her husband as she hung up from her third call to various newspaper contacts. This is about showing that girl that money doesn't make you untouchable. Everyone has secrets. Everyone has weaknesses. We're going to find hers. Robert watched his wife with growing concern. He had seen Margaret angry before, but never like this. This wasn't just wounded pride. This was the cold fury of someone plotting revenge. Margaret, what exactly are you planning? I'm planning to remind Emma Chun that she might be able to buy a lot of things, but she can't buy respect. And she certainly can't buy her way out of the consequences when her little deception is exposed publicly. By midnight, the battle lines were clearly drawn. On one side was Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray, overcast sky that seemed to match everyone's mood. Emma had barely slept, spending most of the night staring at her phone, waiting for a call or text from Michael that never came. She had finally given up on sleep around 5 a.m. and was now sitting at her kitchen table with cold coffee, trying to decide whether to go to work and pretend everything was normal. Her decision was made for her when her phone rang at 7:30 a.m. It was Sarah from the boutique. Emma, you need to see the morning news. Channel 7. Right now. Emma grabbed the remote and turned on her small television. The morning news anchor was speaking over a photo of Emma that had clearly been taken without her knowledge, probably outside the boutique. Sources confirm that Emma Chun, daughter of tech billionaire David Chun, has been living under an assumed identity for the past 2 years, working as a sales clerk while hiding her true wealth from everyone around her, including her fiancé. Emma felt her stomach drop. The news story had everything. Details about her real identity, her father's wealth, her engagement to Michael Harrison, and what the reporter called an elaborate deception that has shocked the wealthy social circles of both families. Her phone immediately started ringing with calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Reporters, probably, or gossip bloggers looking for a comment. She turned off the television and sat in the sudden quiet of her apartment, realizing that her private life had just become public entertainment. 20 minutes later, her father called. Emma, have you seen the news? I've seen it. This came from the Harrison family. I'm sure of it. Margaret Harrison has contacts in the media, and this story is too detailed to have come from anywhere else. Emma felt a surge of anger. She had expected Margaret to be upset, but she hadn't expected her to go to the media. What do I do, Dad? You come home. You let me handle this the way business disputes should be handled. Emma knew what that meant. Her father would use the full force of his wealth and influence to destroy the Harrison family publicly and privately. He would make them regret ever crossing a Chun. I don't want you to destroy them, Dad. Emma, they just humiliated our family on national television. They made you look like a fraud and a liar. This isn't about your feelings anymore. Before Emma could respond, there was a knock at her apartment door. Through the peephole, she could see Michael standing in the hallway, and her heart leaped despite everything. Dad, I have to go. Michael's here. Emma, be careful. This young man is caught between two very powerful forces that can make people do unpredictable things. Emma opened the door to find Michael looking haggard, as if he hadn't slept either. His eyes were red, and his usually perfectly styled hair was disheveled. I saw the news, he said without preamble. Michael, I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this to become public. He walked past her into the apartment, then turned to face her with an expression she couldn't read. My mother did this, didn't she? Emma nodded. Probably. Michael sat heavily on her small couch, burying his face in his hands. Emma, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Reporters, business associates, friends, people I haven't talked to in years. Everyone wants to know if I knew. If I was part of some elaborate scheme to hide your identity. What did you tell them? I told them no comment and turned off my phone. He looked up at her with pain in his eyes. But, Emma, the damage is done. This story is everywhere. Social media, financial news, gossip websites. They're calling you everything from a modern Cinderella to a manipulative heiress playing games with poor people's emotions. Emma sat down next to him, careful not to touch him in case he pulled away again. I know this is overwhelming. I know the timing is terrible. But, Michael, none of this changes how I feel about you. Doesn't it? Michael stood up and began pacing, just as his mother had done the night before. Emma, I've been thinking about this all night. Every conversation we've had, every moment we've shared, I keep wondering what was real and what was you studying how normal people live. Everything was real. My feelings, my love for you, the way I felt when you proposed, all of it was completely real. But you were lying to me every day. Every time I worried about money, every time I planned our future based on what I could afford, every time I felt proud that I could take care of you. You must have thought I was pathetic. Emma felt tears starting in her eyes. Michael, I never thought you were pathetic. I thought you were wonderful. You were kind and generous and real in a way that most people in my world aren't. Your world, Michael repeated. That's just it, Emma. We don't live in the same world. We never have. Before Emma could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed James Morrison's name. I should take this, she said apologetically. Emma, we have a problem, James said without preamble. Margaret Harrison isn't done. She's filed a lawsuit. A lawsuit for what? Fraud, emotional distress, and invasion of privacy. She's claiming that your deception caused her family financial and emotional harm, and she wants damages. Emma stared at Michael, who was watching her face and clearly understanding that something serious was happening. James, that's ridiculous. What damages could she possibly claim? She's saying that your deception caused her to enter into legal proceedings under false pretenses, that it damaged her family's reputation, and that it caused her son emotional distress. It's mostly nonsense, but it's expensive nonsense that will keep this story in the news for months. Emma hung up and turned to Michael. Your mother is suing me. Michael's face went completely white. She's what? Fraud, emotional distress, invasion of privacy. She wants financial damages for my deception. Michael sat back down heavily. Emma, I am so sorry. I had no idea she would go this far. Your mother has declared war on my family, Michael. Do you understand what that means? My father doesn't lose wars. If she wants to fight, he'll give her a fight that will destroy everything your family has built. As if summoned by her words, Emma's phone rang again. This time it was her father, and when she answered, his voice was cold and controlled in a way that Emma recognized from her childhood when she would overhear his business calls. Emma, I've just been served with legal papers. Margaret Harrison is suing you for fraud. I know, Dad. James just called. This ends now. I'm going to buy Harrison Holdings. Emma felt her blood turn to ice. Dad, what? I've been reviewing their financial situation. They have significant debt, several properties that are over-leveraged, and a business model that's been struggling since the economic downturn. I can acquire their company within 30 days. Dad, please don't do this. Emma, this woman has attacked our family publicly and legally. She's made you a laughingstock in the media and is now trying to profit from her own mistakes. Did you think I would just ignore that? Michael was watching Emma's face with growing alarm, clearly understanding from her side of the conversation that something catastrophic was about to happen. Dad, Michael has nothing to do with this. Please. Michael Harrison is Margaret Harrison's son. He's part of her family, which means he's part of this conflict whether he wants to be or not. Emma hung up and turned to Michael, who was looking at her with a mixture of fear and resignation. My father is going to buy your family's company. Michael closed his eyes. Of course he is. Emma, do you understand what you've done? You've turned this into a war between billionaires, and my family is about to become collateral damage. I never wanted any of this to happen, but it is happening. Michael stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Emma, I love you. Or at least, I love the person I thought you were. But this situation is impossible now. Your father is about to destroy my family. My mother is suing you. And I'm caught in the middle of something I can't control. Emma felt her world collapsing around her. Michael, we can fix this. I can talk to my father, you can talk to your mother. Can you? Michael turned to face her. Emma, your father is one of the most powerful men in the world. My mother just picked a fight with him using lawsuits and media manipulation. This isn't going to end with a conversation. They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Emma looked through the peephole and saw a man in an expensive suit holding official-looking papers. Process server, she told Michael. Then, opened the door to receive the lawsuit papers that made Margaret Harrison's attack official. As she signed for the documents, Emma realized that her experiment in normal living had led to consequences she never could have imagined. She had wanted to find love without the complications of wealth, but instead she had created a conflict that would destroy innocent people and force her back into a world of power plays and legal battles. Michael watched her sign the papers, and when the process server left, he turned to her with a look of final resignation. Emma, I can't marry you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Michael, please, don't let them win. Don't let our families destroy what we have. What we have is built on a lie. Not a malicious lie, maybe, but a lie nonetheless. Michael's voice was gentle but firm, and now that lie has consequences that go far beyond just us. He took the engagement ring from his pocket. Apparently, he had been carrying it around since their confrontation, and placed it gently on her kitchen table. I need to go help my family prepare for whatever your father is planning to do to us. As Michael walked toward the door, Emma felt desperate panic rising in her chest. Michael, what if I give it up? What if I walk away from all of it? The money, the inheritance, everything? What if I become the person you thought I was? Michael stopped at the door and turned back to her, his eyes full of sadness. Emma, you can't give up who you are. And I can't pretend that this didn't happen. Some things can't be undone. After he left, Emma sat alone in her small apartment, surrounded by the remnants of her simple life. The lawsuit papers lay on her table next to the engagement ring, evidence of how completely her two worlds had collided. Her phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Ms. Chun, this is Rebecca Martinez from Channel 7 News. We'd like to give you an opportunity to tell your side of the story. Emma hung up without responding, but the phone immediately rang again. And again. And again, outside her window, she could see news vans beginning to gather on the street below. Her anonymous life was officially over, and the war between the Chun and Harrison families was just beginning. But as Emma sat in the growing chaos of media attention and legal battles, she realized that the most important casualty of this war wasn't money or reputation or business empires. It was love, simple, honest love that had been destroyed by the collision of two worlds that had never been meant to meet. The billionaire's daughter had learned that some experiments in normal living come with a price that money can't fix, and some secrets, once revealed, change everything forever. The question now wasn't whether she could win the war her mother-in-law had started, but whether anything would be left worth saving when the battle was over. Emma Chun, backed by billions of dollars, and one of the most powerful legal teams in the country. On the other side was Margaret Harrison, backed by old money connections and a network of social contacts who could destroy reputations with whispered conversations at the right dinner parties. In the middle was Michael, torn between the woman he loved and the family that had raised him, trying to figure out whether their love was real or just another casualty of a war between worlds that should never have collided. The next morning would bring the first shots in a conflict that would expose secrets, destroy relationships, and ultimately force everyone involved to confront the truth about what really matters when love meets money and pride collides with power. He turned to Emma, his face full of conflict. I have to go deal with this. Michael, please, let me come with you. Let me explain to your parents. No, he said firmly. Emma, I need time to process all of this. The woman I thought I knew doesn't exist. The relationship I thought we had was based on a fundamental misunderstanding. I need to figure out what any of this means. As Michael left her apartment, Emma felt her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. She had thought that love would be enough to overcome the obstacles, but she was beginning to realize that the gap between her world and Michael's was wider than just money. It was about identity, about honesty, about the different ways people viewed power and privilege. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing someone living their own version of normal life. Emma realized that after tomorrow, her experiment in being ordinary would be over, and she would have to face the consequences of the war she had just started with Margaret Harrison. But more than that, she would have to figure out whether love could survive the collision of two worlds that had never been meant to meet. Prenuptial agreement. James's laughter echoed through the phone. "Oh, Emma, this is Rich. Do you want me to respond as your lawyer, or do you want to handle this differently?" Emma thought for a moment, picturing Margaret's smug face and remembering the condescending tone she had used. "I want to handle this personally, James. But I want you to prepare some documents for me. I think Mrs. Harrison is about to get an education about assumptions." As Emma hung up the phone, she realized that her quiet experiment in normal living was about to come to an explosive end. Margaret Harrison had pushed her too far, and now Emma was ready to push back. The question wasn't whether to reveal her true identity anymore. The question was how to do it in a way that would make the biggest impact and teach Margaret Harrison the most important lesson of her life about judging people based on appearances. Margaret Harrison was used to getting her way, used to people backing down when faced with the full force of her displeasure and her family's power. She had no idea that the quiet young woman her son loved came from a world where the Harrison fortune would be considered modest, where power was measured in global influence rather than local real estate holdings. The battle lines were being drawn, though only one side knew it. Emma continued working at the boutique, continued living her simple life, continued believing that love would be enough to overcome whatever obstacles lay ahead. She had no idea that Margaret Harrison was about to make the biggest miscalculation of her life, one that would reveal secrets that would shock everyone involved and change the balance of power in ways no one could have predicted. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose the truth about wealth, family, and the dangerous assumptions people make when they think they know everything about someone based on appearances alone.